Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a very special show today with a number of people who can't speak on behalf of the DoD. Introduce
Correct.
yourself and give us your caveat so we can actually start having a fucking conversation.
Yeah, Trent Segmiller, Air Force Special Reconnaissance, formerly SAUT. Not speaking on behalf of the DoD today, but trying to match your sultry tones. You have a great voice. So
Thank you. Yeah,
trying to put some bass into it today.
It's not on purpose. I think it's probably from some childhood trauma, to be honest, but we'll save that for a later date. So you guys host One's Ready, and what is that about exactly?
Well, when we started the project, there was a lot of information out about Air Force Special Warfare, Pararescue, TACP, Combat Control, and SR that was
I'm
either
sorry, whoa. You left out the weatherman.
used to be SAUT, now Special Reconnaissance. That's a long story, and I'm not sensitive about it at all. But there either wasn't enough information or there was a lot of incorrect information out there. So
the Joe News Network, right?
right, and
It's
so
always
as
dumb shit.
yeah, people that care about the community, we decided to just jump in there and try to put the right information out there and see what we could do for them.
And how's that going?
It's going.
So you got 3 hosts, I guess, of the show, or it's not just a show, it's a program, an informational thing as well, right?
Right. So we're trying to get the latest and greatest information, especially about like the training pipeline out there. There's been a lot of changes lately. And to get the most information out there and the broadest experience, we have a combat controller, Peaches, the pararescue guy who will always tell you about pararescue, Aaron. And then myself, Special Reconnaissance. I'm kind of like the oddball out, so
Sure,
it is what it is.
I mean, look, everybody needs one, right?
Yeah.
Now, tell me about yourself a little bit, how you got into AFSOC in the first place and what that was like.
Well, this is a fun story. I always tell the guys I backed into special operations the wrong way, and yet here I am talking about special operations all the time.
Well, you've heard Jared's story, right? How he wasn't even supposed to be in it, and he and 2 other dudes that were in his basic company just snuck into the commander's office and said, yeah, they told us to come here to go to AFSOC. And he's like, oh, okay, signed him up.
That's what they never tell you
Jared's
about
a
the
piece
military.
of shit. He definitely is. If anybody else told me that story, I'd be like, I don't know about that, but I know for a fact Jared did that shit.
He definitely did that.
Yeah. Scumbag. But it worked out in the end, right? Shit.
Yeah, but I tried to join as one thing. Couldn't get a top secret clearance when I went to basic training because I wasn't the most boring person as a civilian.
Sure, yeah.
And then I ended up in weather in the Air Force. And then, some guys came, gave us the briefing. They said, hey, do you want to jump out of planes and do stupid stuff and still do weather? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, but yeah, count me in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's better than just doing the weather. Look, meteorologists have a really bad rap
They do.
because they're always wrong. And there's only one other profession where you can always be wrong and keep your job, and that is politician.
That is true.
Right? So how does it feel?
It feels pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Still getting paid?
Yeah.
About to
yeah.
retire? Fuck
No
'em,
one's
man.
wearing defund the weatherman shirts
That's
yet,
true. Not
although
yet, right?
we
I should actually make that now. That's a good idea. You guys like that? I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Defund weathermen. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure that's going to register with everybody. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, that's interesting. So I had some similar experiences, although I did end up getting a top secret clearance later, which is to this day surprising to me.
Right.
Like that's how I know that the clearance process doesn't mean shit. You know what I mean? Because as soon as I got it, they like it was from the federal government or from Homeland Security, and I got it. I'm like, you sure? Like I called them, I'm like, you don't. I don't think you're making the right decision here,
Bob,
sir. Stop
bro.
calling us. They're like, stop calling us. It's done. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how often is the show? How often do you put an episode on?
We drop at least 1 episode per week, and it's a as we've moved on, as we keep going. So like in the beginning, it was a lot of how to improve your run and all these other things that we were doing, which we probably need to go back to eventually, and rehash those things as the audience updates. But we have a bunch of guests on there. We do like a Legends series where we bring on legends from our community,
Sure, yeah.
people that have been there since the beginning and done amazing things, and then regular guests that we just find interesting. So keep it fresh.
And what's your goal exactly? I mean, obviously, it's a relatively small community.
It is,
and most of you guys know each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of weird, to be honest. It's very incestuous, frankly. But what is your overarching goal with this whole thing?
I think the goal is if you are thinking about joining the military, whether you're going to be special operations or not, telling you about it, giving you the right mindset, preparing these folks, and I don't want to call them kids, but I will, preparing these kids in the best way and setting those expectations for them early. I think helps out. And there's a lot of people out there on the internet that want to talk about their military experience in a really negative way. And I'm not saying that that's not valid.
Sure, yeah.
But we try to lean into the positive, like all the opportunities that you have. We've all been in about 20 years, so there's always drama, there's always all this other stuff, but we're trying to like show how much opportunity there is in the military and how much you can get out of it, after you join.
Well, at the end of the day, we still got to, have a military.
Yeah.
And it's gotten super weird now, right? We were talking about it on the walk over here. People in I don't think the Army's doing this. I haven't heard about it, but the Marine Corps and Air Force are giving kids supplements like vitamin D and calcium supplements when they come in now because their bones are bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like this is not great for us. There's a lot you can talk about a lot of the quote unquote woke stuff that happens at the DoD and all that other bullshit. But this is like physiology. Right. You know what I mean? And you pile that on top of the fact that the average 21-year-old in 2023 has about 40% less testosterone as their counterpart in 2001. Now we get some fucking problems. Bone density and testosterone are decreasing rapidly, and amongst the very people that we need to protect us.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we're trying to get after is if I think a lot of the parents listen to what we're doing, and a lot of people that are about to have kids, and if you could just put that message out there, like, hey, put your kids outside, make them run around, make them do different things that are going to prepare them. Because like in the beginning, I know, like we'd have 13, 14-year-olds ask us questions, and we're like, man, what are you talking to me for? Go live your life and have a good time. But I think we've changed our minds a little bit, and we're like, hey, like here are some of the things that you definitely need to be doing because your experience is not the same as my experience.
Well, sure, but from when our generation was when we were teenagers, you didn't need to tell us to go play sports,
right?
Because we were already doing that shit. We were already setting fires in yards and stuff and running away from the police, which is good exercise, by the way.
It depends on the cop, It
fair
might not
enough.
be that hard.
No, these days I just like I look at the cop and then he looks back at me and I look at his stomach and I look up at him and I just start kind of jogging.
Right.
Like, you're not coming, dude. I can run for 3 days. I don't give a shit. I'm out of shape and I can still run for 3 days. You're not getting out of here.
Right.
Humpty Dumpty, just kind of waving back and forth. No, there's I don't want to get all fucking Andy Rooney, like, oh, the good old days bullshit, but there's like demonstrable physiological decline going on amongst these young men. It's like you have to meet the problem head on. We solve as a culture too many problems too far downstream. Like, we want to react to things instead of being proactive, and it seems like you guys and us and whoever else that speak to this next generation of kid that's going to become our new warfighter, we have to start talking to them a little bit earlier, so they're actually prepared to do the job. You know what I mean? You can't wait until they're 17 anymore.
Yep. Well, and that's what we're doing. Like, where are the kids at? The kids aren't, like we can have recruiting throw stuff out at NASCAR and all these other things and things that we've done in the past, like the print, whatever, how much money they spend on that. But we were looking at it. We're like, where are the kids at? The kids are on YouTube.
Minecraft.
Yeah.
What
all these
the
other
fuck
places.
is that?
I don't know. My kids talk about it.
Oh my God.
That's where I'm at.
Can't with that bullshit, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen. It is. Like, it's the only reason that the armed forces aren't currently advertising on TikTok is because it's owned by a Chinese conglomerate. Right. If Oracle had bought it a year and a half ago or 2.5 years ago, every other TikTok would be. And look, there's already all of these PSYOP influencers over there. It's like a fucking 19-year-old girl that's go join the army. Like, nope. Been tricked by you before. Got 35% interest on a fucking Camaro, brother.
Right.
Not doing that again. But yeah, it's like you got to expect that, not meeting recruiting goals and stuff, they're going to do something.
Well, somebody has to do something.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, look, the bigger DODs, their strategy is typically to lower standards to meet the recruiting goals, and or offer big sums of money, which I don't have a problem with that part. Bonuses are that if you got to do that to get qualified people, and that's one thing. But when you start lowering standards, we got real problems, right? Because the conditions at which you have to operate are not changing.
They're getting worse,
yeah.
If anything. And so I know in our community, like, like if you lower physical standards for like a cyber only person, that's fine. But, in our community, you just can't do that. Like the things that we're going to ask our folks to do, the things that we have asked our folks to do, and I think that's one of the things we're trying to get after is like, if these kids are not coming in with the right mentality and physically fit and ready with correct expectation of what's happening, and if they don't have any reach back moments of hard stuff that they've done in the past to help get them through the next thing, then they're not going to make it.
It's interesting you say that about let's just call them pogues. for shorthand,
All
right?
right.
It's interesting you say that because I have always felt, and I'm not even kidding about this, I've always felt I don't give a fuck if my pack clerk is in shape.
Right.
If they can do the paperwork right, that's your job. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's a soldier first. I mean, I guess. But it's 2023. We're not getting into a war where fucking pack clerks are going to have to pick up. Because even if they do pick up a gun, it's going to be a 30-foot-long M16 that hasn't been issued to anybody other than them since the 1960s. You know what I mean?
I think those A2s have good ballistics, though, right? With that
Yeah,
super
yeah,
long
they
barrel.
do actually. Yeah, yeah. It's just your pistol grip is way out here because of that buttstock. Yeah, but I've never really minded too much about that, especially when you're talking about all the cyber warfare stuff that's going on right now, right? I mean, explain to me exactly how somebody in a trailer just north of here is going to perform better if they can run 2 miles in 11 minutes. You know what I mean? It's incongruous, I think, with the actual need of that particular job.
Yeah, I guess you could make the argument that it wouldn't affect them, but like having a sustained level of excellence, if you're using your brain a lot, I have to imagine that being in decent shape helps you.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
you can only run on caffeine and nicotine for so long. I mean,
Don't tell anybody in this room that.
I think I'm still trying to find the wall.
Yeah.
I'm just.
What are you talking
doctors
about?
Tell me. I've heard a doctor said one time.
Rippets and fucking nicotine patches, man. Everybody's on the Zen now. You on the Zen?
Never done the Zen.
Yeah.
Oh god.
I'm the holdout.
You're the whole. Is it you guys use Zen? What about you? You definitely do.
I'm a no. I just snooze.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is like the same thing.
Either way, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, snoosh.
But yeah, I mean, it's ultimately you got to be there. I agree with you. How you do anything is how you do everything. Ultimately,
Right.
It's like if you're a piece of shit at life, you're probably going to be a piece of shit at your job. But you know, I couldn't run a 11-minute 2 mile right now, which I could before.
Right.
There's no way I could do it right now, and I don't think, like if I just happened to go back in as a computer tech or something, I can do well enough to do that.
Right.
For real. I can sit upright in a chair, which is, mostly what people do anyways.
Yeah, upright-ish.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
Yeah, we're doing it right now.
Yeah,
This
we're
is
setting
the
a great
evidence.
example.
So yeah, what do you, I know you don't speak on behalf of the DoD or anything, but tell me all the things you hate about the DoD. I'm just kidding. What do you see going on right now that's actually preparing us for the future, right? Like I have to assume that the impetus for starting this program in the first place was that not enough is being done.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an institutional failure. Maybe it is just the case that you need more input from guys who've been through it already to come back in after their service is over and help reconstruct the force. That might just be the case, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if the question is what are we doing for the future?
Mm.
I mean, the things like this, I'm always on two sides of everything, right? Like the whole like the fat clerk. I'm always like, well, you signed a contract to say you're going to stay in shape.
Yeah, fair enough,
But
yeah.
also like you don't. Do I really need you to run?
Yeah.
And then on one hand, I'm like, well, this next generation, I'd love to be an old man that's always ragging on the next generation, but I interact with them on a regular basis. And if you, if I go into my Instagram profile, it's all about people being fit and doing the best that they can, and achieving their goals and doing the best that they can for themselves and their country through personal excellence. And so, building that foundation of people through projects like ours, I think whether or not they end up in our community specifically or not in the military at all, I think there's a lot of goodness there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's I find it to be a lot. It's interesting. We always get hung up on the I guess the physiological shortcomings of people, because I can get you in shape. Unless you have like a disease or some shit, I can fix that problem.
Right.
I can't fix the problem of you being a piece of shit necessarily. Maybe I can,
Yeah.
right? But it's inefficient to get the government to invest in a guy that's a piece of shit with the off chance you might be able to get him to not be that anymore. But it's, I've always wondered why there wasn't something institutional with the DoD where, like, kids that go into the delayed entry program their junior year and they're doing PT for a full year before they ever even get like into a unit somewhere.
Right.
That seems like a really good idea to me. Not that you should be conscripting people at 17, but maybe have some kind of, maybe the DoD partners with some organization or organizations like yours or some others that are like, hey, we're going to teach you a little bit about taking care of yourself and the right kind of mindset to be able to do this stuff. It seems like a good investment from my perspective.
Yeah, but to me, investments at the higher levels, the further up you are in the bureaucracy trying to get stuff done, the less effective it is. And so, like,
And the less likely it's going to get done, too, frankly. And unless some officer can put it in as OER, it's not getting done. That's how that works.
Well, and even if you write out the perfect script to make it happen, it comes down to the individual, just like everything else. The individual recruiter doing the right thing for the right reasons with the right people.
Well, how do you? That's a good point too, because recruiter is another word. So meteorologist, I believe, is Spanish for liar, if I'm not mistaken. Recruiter is also Spanish for liar.
Right.
And then you're not doing. We incentivize recruiters to get people in and then through their A school, right? Typically, I think that's when they get credit, is when the A school is complete.
Right.
What are we doing to decentivize them from putting shitbags through the pipeline? You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like, from what I know from my other recruiter friends, I don't think there's an actual penalty. If you put 80 people in and only 20 graduate, you get credit for 20.
Right.
You don't get not credit for 60. You know what I mean?
Well,
like you don't lose points, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough problem because it's, like I said, like the people at the top, all they see is numbers, and it's hard not to just make it a math equation.
Sure, yeah.
But from the bottom level, if 80% of your recruiters are garbage, then what you're going to get is garbage. And so what I think the big problem is we don't empower the people at the bottom enough, not only to make the correct decisions, but to hold themselves and the people of similar rank accountable. Like if it's all up to some 06 somewhere, then the level of accountability is
a spreadsheet, right?
Right.
Like there's just not a whole lot of actual management going on at that point.
Right. So I think one of the big problems that we face institutionally is we have too many senior NCOs and officers and not enough work.
Sure,
That's what I think. So
not
like,
enough billets,
So like giving people the space to actually be responsible and to do the right thing and to put that education out there and allow them to do the right thing, I think is huge. We didn't have permission to start the podcast, and we took a fair bit of flack about it.
Yeah.
Even though we thought it was the right thing to do, and we've seen, I think, really positive results. And the Air Force has seen really positive results from it.
I mean, look, the Army's given Tim Kennedy a lot of shit over the years too, but there's a lot of people in the Special Forces pipeline because of him, frankly.
Right.
And the same thing with a lot of other people like Rudy and Jared and you guys. I mean, it's common for that to happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, how do you argue with the results there? How many, even, like, remember Tank Machine? He's a motivational Marine Corps guy. He's kind of off the internet now because he's doing his own thing these days. But he's responsible for quite a few people joining the military as well, and he caught quite a bit of grief from them a few times. It's like, look, people aren't doing that to try to show you up. They're not doing it to try to rub it in your face that you're not getting the work done. They think the work getting done is important, so they're trying to help you out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's not the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to explain it without making it sound egotistical or narcissistic or whatever, but we were in a position where we've all been, in the training command or been instructors.
Yeah.
And so like we try to focus really hard on that. I'm not trying to tell guys how to be the best operator they can possibly be or whatever, or go on to do the coolest secret squirrel stuff. We're just trying to get the right people in the door. And one of the things I think people gravitate towards, like, standards, like one of the things that got me in the door, and this is a kind of a thing, is I walked into my recruiter's office, and I've talked about it before, and I was like, why should I join the Air Force? And he looked at me like, I don't know. Like, he didn't need me, and so it was like a challenge. And so, like, that's what I was going for. And it's my opinion that we don't really build a lot of folks that end up being in our community. We discover them.
Sure, yeah. And the Marine Corps is the same way.
Right.
Typically, it's like that old saying, there's a couple of things that are recession-proof, like booze and porn and shit like that, and gambling. Those are typically the three that are referenced. But the Marine Corps historically has been the one recession-proof, recruiting organization, because they never have a problem. And now they are kind of having a problem, but it's never been that way before, and it's because of exclusivity marketing, right? So you make something seem better than the rest of things that are available, but it's exclusive to this group of people. You have to work for this. This isn't something that just gets handed to you, and people respond to that shit.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost if you try to pass the buck further up the chain and to like an institutional level, and then it just becomes a math problem, And so I've fallen, like, I work a lot of assignments for my career field and other things, and things at that level are a math problem. They're not a person-on-person problem. They're not it doesn't come down to the person necessarily. So I think the messaging that we try to put out there and for everybody else is it's up to the individual. And we're trying to be those individuals to try to open up that pathway, not the end all be all for all Air Force Special Warfare recruiting, but give them, the insights that we possibly can to get them interested.
Sure, yeah. And what do you think about, like, I've had a lot of friends tell me over the years, this is kind of a weird turn, but I've had a lot of friends tell me over the years, like Rob O'Neill, for example, joined the Navy because of the movie Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen.
Right.
And now he is friends with Charlie Sheen, which is kind of weird, kind of funny, but it's... Do you think things like SEAL Team and Maverick and well produced, not like goofy shit, but actually well produced military movies actually have an impact on people still?
Not Hot Shots Part 2.
Well, honestly,
Look it up, kids.
the one where he's on the boat with the fucking M60 and it's just like stacking brass higher and higher until he's completely covered in it, that's pretty dope. I always wanted to do that, but no, but like real ones that are produced well. That's got to have some impact as well, right?
I think so. I mean, I must have watched Black Hawk Down and Band of Brothers 800 times before I joined, which will set you up for some serious disappointment later on if you expect all of your officers to be Dick Winters.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as like a leadership exercise, those are things I go back to. But I think on the Air Force side, it's so hard because we're so small in the Air Force, the ground pounder side and the special ops side, that when the Air Force does make a big investment in a movie, and we've all seen those movies, there's a lot of planes. There's Tyrese running out there with his red beret on, being a CCT going from E6 to E9 in
now, have you
like
ever
3
been?
months.
Have you went out in a gunfight in your beret ever? Anybody?
No.
I mean, it looks cool, I guess, but it
does
doesn't
it?
seem very practical.
Well,
It doesn't. There's no rails on my beret. I can't put a light on there.
he did have a military member tell him not to do that, and yet he still did it. So
Well,
only have so
sometimes
much control.
you got to cheat for Hollywood. Sometimes, I guess.
But I'm just not sure that those.
Wait,
types
that was
of things-
Transformers, right? When he did
It
that.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bring the Rain. I never let them forget. That's what they have to say it. Otherwise, they can't drop now. I'm pretty sure it's part of the process, though.
That's ridiculous.
I think those types of things are less important than they've ever been, because there's so much content out there now that if it's not very specific and if you don't tell the story exactly, then the messaging gets lost. Like 12 Strong. There was an Air Force guy there.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell that story because the general public doesn't seem to understand that an ODA is going to have a random Air Force guy there, and then you have to spend 20 minutes of the movie explaining why an Air Force guy is there with them. So for us, it's a little difficult.
That's a real sad story.
I know.
That movie sucked, by the way.
I was not
Like
a big
that.
fan.
That operation was cool, but that movie was terrible.
There is a John Chapman movie coming out.
Oh, sweet. Who's involved in that?
Dan, what's Dan's last name? Schilling. Dan Schilling wrote the book.
Okay.
And then I know that the person has been named to play Chapman.
Forrest Whitaker. No.
I don't think he had that kind of lazy eye.
Identical. No.
I don't think he would have passed the physical to get in.
Forrest Whitaker could not pass any physical. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's you. Do you know who? Can you say who it is, or is it still under wraps?
That's not a secret, is it? It's Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, good. That would be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He stays in shape,
Yeah.
and he's done well. I mean, look, Jarhead was great.
Yeah.
End of Watch was great. He's done some pretty fucked up action-based stuff that isn't all goofy and like Six Underground and shit like that. Not that it wasn't an entertaining movie. I don't mean that. It was super entertaining. But there's no secret agents, dude. That shit's not real.
Dude,
You know what I mean? Secret agents are like fucking normal-looking gray man dudes with guts who fucking hang out in the alley somewhere and then meet with somebody, give them $25,000 for a piece of information, and then go home.
You just burned everybody
You know
in the
what I mean?
field.
You're all
now all
gone.
the fat guys.
You're all done.
I think that's everybody in Vegas.
That
right now,
Jason Ford
actually.
shit's not real. But Gyllenhaal's done some legit stuff, military-wise, movies and TV, or not TV, movies. Yeah, so that'd be a good one. Yeah.
I'm still not going to hold my breath that that's going to boost our recruiting numbers in any
Sure.
real significant way over
Yeah.
a period of time. Because like the first Top Gun movie, it came out in what, 80 something,
I think it was 88.
and
Or it might have been 86, actually. Shit.
but like how many big blockbuster movies came out per year when Netflix and the internet wasn't a thing yet, and so like Navy saw this huge boost in recruiting.
Right, yeah.
But there's so much stuff out there now, and if you're typing in to your search bar like, hey, I'm interested in special operations, where do I go, or whatever, it's one of those things. You have to kind of go out there and find the people that are interested, or they have to find you, and you have to present the right way.
Sure, yeah.
In the right places.
Have you guys or anybody around you, like TACP Association or anybody, kind of reached out to the production team to offer them a little insight, little, here's what stuff really looks like kind of situation. Or I mean, I know they're going to hire their own technical advisors and stuff, but I'm less concerned about the technical aspect, which I think they probably will get right, than I am about how do you, not just about recruiting, but how does this movie get turned into some traction for dudes who have been killed and their families and, you know, charitable organizations and stuff like that. Because if I was doing something like that, a project like that about somebody that important to the community who did something that amazing, it seems like I would really want to make sure that I wasn't the only one getting paid for it. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of fucked up.
I don't think Dan is like that. I think
certainly he's not. Yeah.
As a former combat controller himself, he's very invested. And the community is very invested in it.
Sure. But the writer of something doesn't always get a whole lot of say in what happens from the screenplay forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So not that I'm, trying to rain on your parade or anything. I'm just curious if that discussion has been had, because Gyllenhaal is a pretty good dude from what I understand.
Yeah.
I don't think he would take advantage of anybody.
I'm not sure. So
well, if he doesn't, whoop his ass, right?
Talk to Dan. I'm not. I don't know. Does he train? I don't know if he trains.
Who cares?
Yeah,
he's not going to fight all of us.
I'll pay Aaron to
He
go.
hangs out with Ryan Reynolds, who's Deadpool, so that could get dangerous. And then also Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. So we would have to fight mutants.
I think Hugh Jackman is mostly balloons.
Yeah. You seen those dudes in like the Middle East and India who inject the oil into their arms and make it look big, and it's like, that's not what a muscle looks like, bud.
I mean, that's social media right there.
Yeah,
as long as it looks big, fake
yeah.
weights and everything.
It is, yeah. I'm glad they're making that movie though. That's great. That's really good for the I mean, because it took so long for him to get recognized in the fucking first place.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of cool the way it went down.
And there were sworn statements that weren't accurate, right? Technically speaking, and that happens sometimes. The cloud of war and all that shit, and people are like, I've had conversations with people that I was just in a gunfight with, and they're like, "You see that? I fucking did this." I'm like, "No, you didn't.
No, bro.
No, you didn't. You did that." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did shoot that." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool. So it happens. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of any shit, but once the ISR, was kind of gone through, it became very clear what happened there.
Oh yeah, it was good on AFSOC. They put together a whole team to go over that frame by frame and figure it all out. And I mean, it was important to our community. It just, like you said, it took a long time. And I'm not a combat controller, but it was a big day when they finally recognized him and
certainly
gave him the Medal of Honor.
I'm glad that happened. All right, well, we're going to wrap this portion and bring your buddy on here in a sec, but is there anything else you would like to share with these assholes before we get out of here?
Buddy is a strong word.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
I mean, we're like a loose work associates at best. I don't know. Check out One's Ready. If you know people that are interested in joining the community, or you're just looking for a podcast to get our take on whatever, we're all still active duty, so it's not spicy. We're not an anonymous account out there trying to burn everything down in sight.
Yeah, no shit.
And so it's one of those things where we put our faces out there and we have to stand behind what we say. So we're just trying to do good work.
Sweet.
See what happens.
All right, cool.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
Try not to fanboy out right now.
All right, round 2 of One's Ready. Introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, Aaron Love, PJ, member of One's Ready.
Yeah.
Happy to be here as always. Not speaking for the DoD in this capacity. I'm just here talking with a friend.
This is I think this might be the first time that someone other than a guy like the SEAC would come on the show as an active duty person, because who's going to stop him? You know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
And you guys have the current SEAC.
We do.
CZ, he's a good dude.
CZ, yeah. So Colon Lopez, he was one of my instructors. As a matter
Oh,
of fact,
no shit, really?
when I was going through the schoolhouse.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's a good dude. Yeah, I've hung out with him a couple of times. And his predecessor Trox was a good dude as well. We've had a good run in that particular position, and that's good for. So explain to our dumb audience the difference between your 3 jobs, because I don't think anybody knows.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, nobody.
Jared's tried to explain, but it just ends up with him taking shots.
Absolutely.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
He's a TAC P guy, so that's kind of we're talking about football team. TAC P guys are your offensive linemen, defensive linemen. They're in the trenches doing the JTAC work. So special reconnaissance give us like legit datum that we can take from the environment, whether that be electromagnetic spectrum, whether it be visual, oceanic, all this other stuff. They grew out of the weather career fields. Combat controllers are there for austere airfield seizure. So their number one job is to open up an airfield where an airfield didn't exist before. And then pararescuemen are there for DOD-wide 100% search and rescue in any environment 24 hours a day.
And so tell me about like a typical deployment for you, what that might look like. Do you just hang out at a cop, or is it more like a larger base and you're on QRF all the time, or do you do any kinetic operations, or is it just the search and rescue stuff?
So it can be both depending. So we had the enabler mission for a long time. Pararescue men are also attached to other units. The enabler mission, they'd go out with ODAs or other high-risk teams that needed them to provide that ground stuff. But you also did some come, sit, and relax. That's what CSAR stands for, is come, sit, and relax. So if the call doesn't go up during that deployment, maybe you don't go out, but that's your best day as a PJ. Is nothing bad happened. And then I also had the privilege, or some would say the unlikely or unenviable task of doing medevac when we were doing medevac as well. So I also lived through that time kind of early in the GWOT of doing.
And I don't want you to speak for Peaches over here, but give me like an example of a CCT deployment. Like what's an operational tempo look like for that guy?
Well, for them, I mean, they're throughout the entire GWOT,
there's a lot of direct action involved there.
100%. Yeah, they were the JTAC du jour. So every single team that needed a JTAC, the larger forces couldn't provide it, and the Air Force made it a point to make all of the CCTs during that time JTAC. So we were the force provider for almost every single soft JTAC that was needed out there. So a lot of direct action, a lot of calling forces and being attached to other teams.
Sure, yeah. I really don't think people know what Rangers are. People know what actually, people don't know what special forces are. They think that they're mostly door-kicking operators and not training local national forces, right? I mean, the Commander in Extremis Force does a lot of door-kicking. As a matter of fact, that's all they do. But training local nationals is kind of the SF job. But nobody knows anything about the Air Force. They think you fly planes, and there's like, 2% of the people in the Air Force fly planes or some shit?
Even less than that, like 1.5% or something. Yeah, it's so small.
Oh, my God. That's really funny. What about Space Force? You get a join?
No, absolutely not. Well, unless I've said this before, I'm already a real dickhead at parties. Like I'm not a very fun guy to have around. Like if I got the first space rescue as a PJ, I'd be fucking unbearable. It would be the worst.
What might that look like? You're in a fucking one of Elon Musk rovers or something?
Absolutely. Well, the idea is low orbit, right? Put them into low orbit anywhere in the world, less than 24 hours. All you have to do is figure out that re-entry problem, and poof, you're on target.
So basically, forget about the PJ thing. You might be. Somebody in Space Force is going to be Randy Quaid.
100%.
Right? And Will Smith, or who was the other guy? Was it Bill Paxton was the other one in Independence Day?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Bill Paxton. Yeah. Somebody's going to be that guy.
Yeah, who's the other one? Jeff, what was his name? Goldblum.
Was he a pilot in that?
Or was he was the tech guy.
Oh, that's right.
He
was
the tech guy.
Yeah. How could you forget?
How could you? Yeah, he was the one that opened up and here we go, and fired the missile.
I mostly go with Randy Quaid, though.
Yeah.
Because he's just a close personal hero of mine.
Tale old as time.
It's just, I feel like that's the kind of guy that I could really be friends with.
Randy Quaid?
Yeah.
I can see
he doesn't give a fuck about anything. And I'm very much on that as well. So when did you join the military?
Right after September 11, 2001. So that happened. I was in the
the same month, right?
Yeah. So I think I enlisted. I went and talked to my recruiter. I took my initial PT test before September was done, and then I spent about 2 months in the delayed entry program, and I showed up to basic on like January 1st of 2002.
And what was your original job?
It was try to be a PJ, but I suck, and I failed the first time, so I had to come back and try it again. So
what did you do in the meantime?
I was an aerospace physiologist, so I did high altitude airdrop mission support. There's a specific job in the Air Force when you open the doors.
A physiologist, like physics or the physiology of the body?
Physiology of the body.
Okay, and you did what? So you were given like EKGs and shit to make sure dudes were clear, and chest x-rays to make sure dudes were clear to do.
You crushed it. Yeah.
Operations?
Absolutely not. No. So it's an oxygen thing, right? Like if you're jumping from high up, you need a lot of oxygen.
Yeah.
You know,
for a certain amount of time too. Yeah.
Exactly. So there are actually techs in the Air Force that, no kidding, will check your oxygen equipment, make sure that you're okay, and they support the jumps or they support the drops. That's what I did.
That's better than hypoxia for sure.
It is.
And then, so how long were you doing that before you got another? And how did you get a second chance at the school? Is that common to be able to just go back, or how's that
so
work?
It is, as long as you're not a complete and total dickhead, which I don't know how I slipped through the cracks, but I basically reapplied for cross training, and they said, yeah, cool, come try it again, come down to Indoc and try it again. So about 4 years after I was a phys tech, they let me come back and try it again, and I made it that time.
So you're probably senior airman by then, right?
I was a staff.
Oh,
I went through as an
really?
E5, yeah.
And that's got to be less common.
It is less common
to be an NCO and going through that schoolhouse.
It is, yeah.
And how was that?
I mean, it was fine. I mean, I had seen it once before. I made it pretty far the first time before my unceremonious exit. So, the second time was a little bit easier. I had a little bit more life experience behind me. And, when you go through the first time, everything is new. You think this training event's never going to end. And, after, 5 years in the military, you can tell when the instructors are playing a role or when they're doing something to prove a point. And, that stress kind of.
Yeah. You also learn when to keep your fucking mouth shut, too,
100%.
which is a really important thing to do. And also pick. It all seems random when they're like, grab a buddy and start doing this exercise. You learn at least I did. You learn very quickly not to ever pair up with the dude that gets picked on all the time.
Nope.
Because you end up doing his push-ups too.
Right.
Fuck that.
That's right.
So
That's
it's,
right.
In some ways it's kind of teaching you some life lessons there.
Right.
And, pitting one another against each other as a form. I guess that would be selective. I like that idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a good idea. It's like dudes need to fucking fight each other sometimes.
Sometimes you got to punch your friend in the mouth.
And it's like, it's not, it's a much more evolved version. Like if you put a bunch of dogs in a room, they're going to, probably 2 or 3 of them are going to scrap with each other at some point, and then they will establish a hierarchy. And from time to time, one of the non-pack leaders will attack the pack leader a little bit. He'll get his ass kicked or he wins, whatever. And then it goes on from there. It's a much more evolved version when you have a bunch of dudes in a room like that, or especially over the course of years, because the tension does build up, and sometimes you just got to knock somebody out.
Yeah.
And also there's a boredom factor in there. Now, I don't know what your guys' experience has been, but if you put a group of infantry dudes like sitting around waiting for transportation back to the unit, you have about 20 minutes before they start throwing rocks and pine cones at each other.
Rocks at
or
helmets.
wrestling.
100%.
Something, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So what do you think that is? Just fun, right?
I think so. I think that's how you pass the time. If you're sitting there for any more than an hour, and I don't know why the military loves to do this, but if you got a 5 o'clock show, you got to show up at 4 o'clock for the PL, and then for the squad leader at 3:30, and pretty soon you got dudes, knuckleheads that are high energy individuals sitting around for an hour and a half with nothing to do. It's a recipe for disaster.
Idle hands are the devil's dingling, I believe, is how it goes.
Indeed,
right?
that's 100% correct. Yeah. I believe that was Faust.
Yeah. So you've been in for 21 and some change years now. When are you getting out?
I don't know. I think I'm going to start making that move here pretty soon. It's definitely time to start making that transition into something else. So definitely in the next next year, year and a half, I think is about the.
And what's the plan after that? I mean, you're at this point in your career, you're not doing the same job you were 10 years ago or 15, especially not 15 years ago.
Sure.
So, I see you guys doing this show and putting the information on your website and stuff and trying to help the community. I assume you're going to continue doing that in some way if you can manage it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's the goal.
And what's that going to look like? You know yet?
I don't know. So
because you're thinking about moving to St. Antoine as well with
Indeed.
Trent, so you can be close. I mean, that's a lot of stuff's happening there now,
right?
For the AFSOC community, especially.
Exactly, it's kind of the mecca. So that's that's the home of everywhere. It's where our assessment selection is. It's where the Chapman Annex is, and everybody starts there. Every single person in our career field starts.
And this guy can't leave Vegas because he's got a crippling gambling addiction. You can just gamble online now, right?
Right. Yeah.
You don't have to be here anymore.
You can just come to Texas with the rest of us.
Yeah.
We'll be totally
Stop
fine.
being a dick, man.
So yeah, I know. I don't know what it looks like. I think I have things that I can currently give back to the community. And I want to keep doing that as long as I am of service. There's going to be different ways to be of service. Yeah. Don't need to be in. And
well, that's a good point. It's something I talk about on this show and other shows a lot. Something I talk about, like tomorrow I'm doing a veteran suicide panel. It's something I'll be talking about then. Are people like us who have been hard chargers for a while, especially. It's not only people like us, but it's all people like us. Get out, and if you don't seize some kind of purpose at some point, then shit starts to get bad for you, right?
Yep.
And it's not people don't like to admit that for some reason. I don't know if they see it as some kind of failure or weakness, but that is just your entire adult life has been defined by a singular purpose. That is in my opinion, the ultimate manifestation of the biological purpose of masculinity, which is to provide and protect, right? Would use your aggression to protect from existential threats. That's what you've done for your entire adult life.
Right.
Now you got to find a way to do that again. Otherwise, that aggression will, for young men, it usually turns into violence, whether it's against others or themselves. For older men, it turns into depression and suicide typically, right? So, this is something I talk to people a lot. You got to find your purpose there. And the fortunate thing for us is that it's almost part of the industry. Like your service doesn't end when your military career does.
Right.
That's very obvious to most people, right? Because your buddies still need you. and the country still needs you.
That's right.
So have you given any thought at all to, how you're going to progress there?
I wish I had a really clean answer for you here,
Sure.
but I just
the answer is never clean, actually.
yeah,
So,
yeah. But I think you're totally right. I don't know how many friends I've seen that they try to do the thing where they're like, oh, my hair's going to get real long and I'm not going to shave my face and then you just see them miserable 6 months later.
Right.
That's never going to.
you can grow a beard and still do stuff.
You got a great beard.
Thank you. Yeah.
You are doing stuff.
Well, I do some things. Yeah,
You do
I
things.
take naps a lot too, though.
Well, that's dope. Though.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
dude,
awesome.
naps are the shit.
Yeah,
Kindergarten had that shit.
I wake up at 7:30 now too, and not 5:30, which is really nice.
2 hours of sleeping in. Okay.
Yeah, I guess. Although I stay up till midnight still, so it's not that great.
That's not bad.
But yeah, you guys provide a lot of service to this community, which is it's a smaller. It's interesting. I think maybe that might be a function of it because it's one of the smaller the AFSOC community in its entirety, but even within the specific career fields, I think it might be one of the smaller soft groups.
It's
right?
the smallest, yeah.
It is the smallest. Okay, so that makes sense that you guys would be a little bit tighter.
Yep.
And that through that, camaraderie, some of this stuff spills over. Like we're not done yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because even Jared quit after 15 years because he had business to do. Right.
Sure.
He left, but he's still been doing stuff with AFSOC the entire time.
Yeah.
And I see more of that from your guys' community than any other one. And I think maybe it's because of the smallness, but I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it is because of that small, intimate team nature. Our whole job is to bring that, that young man into the team room and you're making him a man. And I think that's why, people like Jared and people like the rest of us, we have things to give back, but it's not just, I don't want to just make you a PJ. I want to make you a good man. I want to make you a good kind of person in the team room. I want to turn you into a teammate, or at least give you the skills to be a good teammate somewhere else. It doesn't matter what color hat you wear or, which Department of Defense entity pays your bills.
Sure, yeah.
Man, if you're a good Ranger, you're probably a good SEAL. You're probably a good recon guy.
Sure,
you're
yeah.
probably a good controller. So
what are some of those qualities that you like to pass on leadership-wise? What do you think what is important there?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Protect, provide, be that man, have integrity, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Nobody else is, we've gotten to this point now where, a guy stubs his toe and he goes home and he, complains to his entire family. I'm reminded of the Gulag Archipelago where the guards told, a story of a guy that's on the Gulag Archipelago and the guards tell him, we're going to let you see your wife for 3 days, but we're going to kill you afterwards. And if you tell her, we're going to kill her too. And that he bore that for 3 days and spent that time. And we've lost a little bit of that in America, that little, I'm going to take these things on for myself to show you, to provide and protect. So
yeah, it's interesting. I've talked about something very similar to that recently. Just trying to unpack like a lot. We were talking about some of the triggers that happen for people when they're post-service and depressed, right? Because like these little moments will pop up, and that's the dangerous spot for people, right? All of a sudden they grab a gun and put it in their fucking mouth in a 2-minute window for some reason. And the purpose of discussing it was to give people tools to interdict on their own behalf at that point, because there's oftentimes it happens when nobody else is around. You know what I mean? And there's the only person there that can stop you is yourself. And if you don't have the tools to do that, you might not be able to do it. So one of the, I guess, thought experiments was imagine whomever it is that's closest to you, your wife, your children, your parent, whomever it is, teammate. They tell you, I've got 3 months to live. I'm going to die, right? Obviously, they probably wouldn't say it that way in a very monotone voice, but you receive that information and it hurts you badly. Why exactly does it hurt you badly? It's because you know that deep down, you always knew that your time with everybody is going to be limited, but now you have a date. Like you know that you don't have as much time with this person as you thought you were going to have. So what is the appropriate and logical response to something like that? Obviously, it is to enjoy the time you have with them as much as you can, because once they're gone, you're not going to I promise you this, because I've seen this 100 times. If you spend that last 3 months as a miser and rolling around in your own grief, you will regret that for the rest of your fucking life, right?
Yep.
But we can come up with these. We don't have to make these stories up because we see them all the time.
that's right.
But we can unpack them and try to explain to these people exactly, because sometimes you need to be told why you're feeling what you're feeling, right? You can't just, when you're in it, it's hard to discover it. But when you've been through it and you're looking back, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now, right?
Sure.
I think it's a really important part of all this. So I like the perspective from guys like you that are, one, talking about it, and then two, staying involved in general, right? And that story about the Gulag is really special. You know what I mean? It shows you, look, we're not, most people are not going to be in a Gulag.
No, right.
Or even in, most people aren't ever going to be in a life-threatening situation, I think. Not a real one, right? But that's kind of a superpower, isn't it? Like, it isn't just about what you guys can do for the AFSOC community when you get out. I like what you said before about the broader military community, but I would say it's about the American community, right?
I agree.
Because the ability to stay calm under chaos and being able to rationally unpack very complex emotions and when in the middle of them happening and explain that to somebody that's struggling is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's going to fall on us all at some point to have to deal with that, whether it's one of our buddies or some fucking stranger on the internet that looked your show up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Do you guys get a lot of conversation like that? Do people reach out to you through DMs and stuff like, hey, I'm struggling, blah, blah, blah?
So yeah, there's, you know, and it's sometimes it's wrapped up in, you know, basic stuff like, hey, I can't get my runtime down. But, you know, because we are so transparent, like we make it a point to, if you DM us, we're going to DM you back. One of us is going to hit you back in 24 hours. And, you know, we've gotten all the way up to, hey, I was having a really hard time mentally and I didn't tell you guys, but, you know, we had this conversation and you guys sort of gave me hope for the future. You know, every once in a while we'll get a DM that, you know, we'll hit the group chat. We'll be like, holy cow, I didn't know that we had this sort of impact. But you'd be surprised just being present and just like giving a shit. Imagine just giving a shit for people, what that can do for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's quite literally the least you can do.
Right.
But oftentimes it is the most important thing, right?
You're right.
Just kind of standing there and listening sometimes is really important. What else you got going on?
Oh, that's pretty much it. I'm actually a pretty boring dude. Now, obviously we're, you know, working through this like twilight of, you know, the three of our career after this. And, you know, we're trying to move forward with One's Ready and be of service with everything we can. And I'm looking at my next thing. I'd really just like to promote in jiu-jitsu. I've finally been able to get back into the gym and like actually go roll and get that other stuff going. But as always, you know, moving on to the next thing, I just don't know what it is yet.
Well, I mean, Austin and San Antonio is pretty much the best place on earth to do that now.
Fantastic.
The best jiu-jitsu gyms in the country are in Austin now.
Now, I'm a huge fan of Albuquerque. I don't know how much of a fight time or a fight time we're talking about San Antonio, but I tend to agree.
I'm not sure about San Antonio so much, but definitely Austin.
Austin,
I mean, there's
amazing.
like
there's Danaher and Gordon being up there. Those guys are have just absolutely revolutionized the game.
And the gravity of those guys being there is just in the same way that Rogan moving to Austin has brought every fucking comedian there, which is nice for us because we can have them on the show now that they're locally really easily.
For sure. Yeah,
but
it's way easier.
It was like Rogan showed up and all of a sudden like I'm like, oh damn,
10 different comedy spots.
Now, it's like not the music capital of the world anymore. It's a bunch of dudes talking about buttholes and shit. You know what I mean? Which is, you know, I like that too. So
tight.
Yeah, what if you could let's skip to 3 years from now. You guys are definitely all out. You're definitely all settled where you want to be. What does One's Ready look like then? Like, what's your goal with the organization?
My goal would be is that we get somebody that's in, that we can turn this bad boy over to somebody that has that touch point that's in the organization right there, and that we can get the best possible. You know, my dream has always been like, I want to think of One's Ready like a sports agency. You come to me and you're like, hey, from step one all the way through me putting my beret on and graduating this thing, teach me how to be a good team member and teach me how to be in these career fields. One of the biggest things that we do, unfortunately, is we compete with our sister services because, like you said earlier, everybody knows what a SEAL is. Everybody knows what a Ranger is, and you never heard of a PJ. But we still have a righteous mission, and we need to have people in there. So there's a whole group of people out there that are like, I want to be an operator, I just don't know. Like, what if I told you get to do this? And they're like, oh, hell yeah, I want to do that. Well, it's in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So, you know, 3 years from now, what does that look like? It looks like us still together being of service and then helping this next generation of operator grow up, because the time is coming. Like, there's not a whole lot of people anymore that are going to be in gunfights. 10 years from now, you look at instructors, unless something's popped off, that information is going to go by the wayside.
Yeah, they're going to be in a trailer just north of here running a Boston Dynamics dog with 100%. A little joystick or some shit. Yeah.
Right. So if these young men and, you know, the women that are going to eventually make it through the pipeline, if that ever happens, they don't know what the sound of gunfire is. We have to tell them what that's like. We have to tell them what it was like in GWAT. We have to tell them what it was like in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Yemen and some of these other places that we've been. Because if we don't, if we just want to be those stoic old men that never talk about things, the next generation is going to pay a price.
Yeah, sure as shit didn't help us that our parents wouldn't talk about it.
Nope.
Because we went in balls first.
Fucking
like, oh
hot.
shit.
Because you didn't have your uncle sitting at Christmas or you know, whenever you're getting together and talking about Vietnam and the things that he had to do. It was in vogue almost to completely and totally ignore that.
Yeah, and I remember reading books about it when I was a teenager, and then, you know, into my late teens even. little stuff like talking about some Mac v.
Like Mac v. Sogby, yeah.
Like operations that went sideways and stuff. And the little pieces of information that you pick up out of that, like if you're in a non-permissive environment, don't make your camp on a road,
right,
or near the road, because
right.
somebody's going to fucking find you. Even if it's uncomfortable, go up the side of that hill right there where it's hard to get to. That's
right.
a very practical piece of advice that would have been available if we had just had that conversation 30 fucking years ago.
It's
right?
why fucking oral history has worked throughout the history of time. That's why you sit around the fire and you talk to the elders, because they tell you how to avoid the predators and what to do.
Well, and you see, it's a condition of Western society these days where we keep unsolving problems that we've solved many, many times over and over again. It's like everybody's obsessed with the Stoics now. Like, okay, cool, I agree with you. Seneca is a very smart man. Mm-hmm. Marcus Aurelius, very smart man. We never should have had to read this book again.
Right.
That should have been part of our culture at this point.
You're
like,
right.
you really have to tell somebody that it's not that bad. I have to read a 2,000-year-old document to tell me that it's going to be okay.
I have to read Socrates for him to tell me that I should work out and that I should be a male that is capable of protecting himself.
I mean, it's ludicrous, man. And I think it is. There's something about that oral history. The Jews were really good at it. Mm-hmm. Even pre-writing, a lot of these cultures, the Chinese were really good at it before formal language and stuff, or before formal written language. It was a very important thing. Native Americans as well were super good at that. Mm-hmm. I just talked about that earlier today, about, as we get older, I remember hearing this story about how Native American and tribes, every woman over a certain age and every man over a certain age is referred to by everybody else as grandmother or grandfather, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's the expectation goes two ways. One, that I look up to this elder, and two, that elder's providing me with something.
Right.
You know what I mean? We are fucking way past that now. It doesn't seem like it's going to come from anywhere else other than the GWAT military people that have actually struggled against the vine, I guess, for quite a while, to be like, all right, cool. Because it's part of our nature to train the next guy.
Right.
But I don't think that's intrinsic to Western society anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
you're right. It used to be you were out in the garage with your dad incorrectly holding a flashlight and he was yelling at you. Yeah. Right. And you learn nothing really.
I said 5/8.
Yeah. But I mean, that was part of the process, and this is not like that anymore,
Right.
Unfortunately. So I think maybe we need to pick up some slack in that regard.
I agree.
And start, like, this is why I tell people all the time, if you're upset with federal government intruding into your life, you feel that way, go find the problems they're solving and solve them your fucking self.
Right.
Box them out, because that's the only way you're going to solve that. And the only way we're going to solve this young male crisis of violence and depression and suicide in this country is the same thing. Like, the people that have experience with this stuff have to get back involved in whatever way you can. It seems obvious, right?
It does. But again, we're reading 2,000-year-old books to get obvious lessons from things that we haven't read, learned before.
Man. That makes my head hurt. I guess that's as good a place as any to stop before I fucking jump out this fucking window.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on today, both of you guys. I appreciate it. It's been great. I like the shows you guys do. I like the fact that you're, put yourself at a little bit of risk to get back involved as early as possible, even before you're out of the service and stuff like that. We really appreciate that. So, and again, thanks for coming on today.
Appreciate you having me on, man. I'm a fan of your podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else you'd like to share with these dicks before we leave?
No, thanks, dicks. Have a great one.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for watching. This has been Citizen.